You're not going to really start it all. Did you see these? 7:30.
Welcome everyone to the Board of Education Appreciation presentation, and let's thank our musicians who played for us while we all entered. We are representing Coordinating Council. Unfortunately, one of the co-presidents, Ms. Natasha Gordon, couldn't be here this evening because her son is ill, but she is here in spirit. This is Stella Pruce, our Secretary Treasurer. And now we are going to go to the President of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Denise, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for the wonderful music as we came in. We're calling the meeting to order, and we'll just start with the pledge before we hand it back over to the Coordinating Council. Thank you so much all for coming. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Denise, please.
Stella?
Thanks, Denise. So the New York State School Board Association recognizes October 21st through the 27th as School Board Recognition Week. This is a time to promote awareness and understanding of the important work performed by school board members. The North Shore School District is joining all public school districts across the state to celebrate and honor its board members for their commitment to our community and its children.
It takes strong schools to build a strong community, and with their commitment to public education, school board members take on one of the most important citizen responsibilities, overseeing the education of the community's youth while giving the community a voice in educational decision-making. Serving on a local school board is no easy task, particularly in today's climate of rapid change and financial uncertainties. They make the tough decisions every month and spend many hours studying education issues and regulations in order to provide the kind of accountability their citizens expect on a volunteer basis without a stipend.
They help raise the student achievement by creating a shared vision for the future of education, setting the direction of the school district to achieve the highest student performance, providing accountability for student achievement results, developing a budget that aligns district resources to improve achievement, supporting a healthy school district culture in which to work and to learn, and much more.
President Sarah Jones, Vice President David Ludmar, Trustee Joanna Commander, Trustee Richard Galati, Trustee Tim Madden, Trustee Marianne Russo, and Trustee Lisa Vizza. In recognition of your services, tonight, the North Shore Coordinating Council of Parent Organizations, along with representation from our entire district, are here to say thank you for all that you do. To let you know, dear trustees, that the benefit of your hard work, dedication, and commitment of time for our children and community is truly appreciated and valued. We will begin our ceremony with musical entertainment for your pleasure from members of the high school band under the direction of Mr. David Soto.
begin, we have a couple of soloists on piano. We have Kate Wesley Jones on trombone, Keegan Brown, Luke Antonori on double bass, and Kyle Wolf on drum set. This is a great chart. It's helped us grow as artists, discovering the swing style and the ballad style. Both combined. It's really awesome. Take it away.
Thank you so much.
Board of Education members, thank you. We love you for supporting the love and loving the arts. I can't thank you enough for that. I really-
So now we have the pleasure of introducing our elementary school principals who will invite their students to say thank you in their own special way. Principal Nimmo?
Okay. Well, good evening, Go program. The Let Go program encourages kids to start being more responsible and to challenge themselves to try new things. For this program, I've been doing many things to help myself grow. From walking my dogs, taking out the garbage, and babysitting my sister, being independent has shown me that I can do more if I just give myself a chance. I've learned to be confident and to do my personal best. Hello, my name is Zachary Morsian, and I am a 5th grader at Glenhead Elementary. I am also the co-president of Dignity Grow. I'm proud of being a 5th grader because this year we have the freedom to sit anywhere at Glen. This year we also get Chromebooks, which is a big responsibility for me and all the other 5th graders. One of the things I enjoy about school is my kindergarten buddies. My kindergarten buddies teach me that being nice can change someone's day or even their lives. This makes me feel more mature and independent. I feel like I can do anything.
We thank you for all that you do to support Glen High School. We have a small token of appreciation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all for the incredibly thoughtful gift. Thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for sharing all of your thoughts about the work that you're doing in your school and the responsibilities that you have. We really appreciated your sharing with us tonight. Thank you.
Principal Binder.
I'd like to call out Audra Montantonio and Christine Lowe.
Isn't this nice?
Have some, actually, almost the whole entire team, because my leadership club
Wow.
is here tonight. We have a couple of representatives that will explain what we're proud of. This is Ms. Montantonio. Why don't you go ahead and say our names as we're coming first?
Oh my goodness. Oh, now we have to double row it. The guys have tall kids in the back. There we go.
And this hall is also the color.
Seven or six.
Good evening. We're in the formal landing beginning for the night. You'll see us equitable landing in the hallways or on the playground. Distract the literal walls. Both within our school and our community.
Community diplomats, we help kids on the playground by teaching them how to be independent problem solvers, committed individuals, collaborators, and communicators. We train to become unbiased listeners. We look at situations from various perspectives while demonstrating respect for all students. We also create and implement habits of teaching kids about the ruler, our best reputation of them included, making charters, encouraging the use of communities, exploring their best selves. Our mission is to help others build friendships, learn empathy, and start kindness throughout all of them learn. One of the ways we have done so is through the Kindness Box campaign. The Dignity Diplomats last year educated all the students in our school, kindergarten through 5th grade, about spreading kindness and the origin of the Kindness Box movement, which included decorating rocks and writing inspirational quotes on them. They read the book Only One Me by Linda Franklin and invited students to create rocks and use art releases as learners. 3 rocks were created per student. One stayed at our school for years to come, one was exchanged in another student in our school, and the last one was we shared and replaced them. GWL spreads kindness in over a dozen countries and 17 states. But our mission to spread kindness doesn't end here. We present these rocks to you this evening and ask you in turn to continue to spread kindness just as we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gwenwood Landing Dignity. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Oh my, thank you. These are beautiful, and I'm sure everyone joins me. Thank you so much for coming tonight and for sharing the work you've been doing and for sharing these beautiful gifts. Thank you, guys.
Principal Zublionis?
Confucius said. I know. We've got fresh produce.
Good evening, everyone. This evening we have Sequel students Finn Collins, Nate Curiale, Mia Pinto, Caroline Sheppel, Jane Sheppel, and Ruth Schweiger here to talk to you about our Sequel School garden. And we also have our lead garden parent, Ms. Maria Mosca, who is our caretaker for our garden. A few years ago, the Sequel School community was looking to build an outdoor learning space, including a garden and a greenhouse. And with the support of our PCA, we raised funds, built the garden. Now we're actively using it, and our students are going to talk to you about the work they've been doing.
Good evening, Board of Education trustees and Dr. Giroza. The Sequel School Garden Club would like to present you with some gifts from the Sequel School Garden. The Sequel School Garden was built in 2016, soon after we added our greenhouse. We plant a wide array of vegetables in the garden and greenhouse, including tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, arugula, and garlic. This year we even have the beginnings of a small pumpkin patch. With the help of our consultant gardener, Renato Stafford, and our lead parent gardener, Maria Mosca, we have made sure that the garden is also a classroom and center for community gardening education. Classes visit the garden once per month and work with Mr. Stafford and Ms. Mosca to learn about how to plant vegetables, how to save seeds, how to harvest plants, and how to compost. Our garden is now truly self-sustaining as we produce organic soil with our school composting program that we will use to plant next spring. Classes also visit the garden to make curriculum connections to thinking, literacy, and science. By taking care of the garden, students also learn about the empathy and commitment to others. We want to thank the Board of Education for supporting learning that is exciting and meaningful. Please accept our gift of pumpkin seeds, garlic, and other fresh vegetables.
What a beautiful thing.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for the hard work that went into the garden. And of course, thank you for the beautiful vegetables.
And now from the middle school, Principal Dennis.
So on behalf of the students in the middle school, particularly the gift I'm going to present to you is from a group of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who during their lunchtime over the last few days have been working in our makerspace to come up with a really great gift for you. And as they were making the gift, I said to them, so what are some things that you would be thankful for the Board of Education for? Why are we having a night like this? And it was really interesting because one of the 6th grade students who actually happens to be a new student to our school was in the middle school last year, grades 5 through 8. And this particular student said to me, "This is an unbelievable place because I get to take so many classes that I'm really, really interested in." So he talked about Makerspace and Wow You Make One for 2 classes that we made. So when I asked them, what are some other things you thank the Board of Education for and think that they do? A girl said, "Well, aren't they the people who built our school?" And I said to her, "When do you think this school was built?" And then she said, "A long time ago, like in the 1990s. And that made me feel a lot of different things. But I can speak on behalf of them. They're not here tonight, and our teacher who helped make this is not here tonight. He's actually at the New York State Conference for Technology Educators in Oswego. On behalf of the Technology Department, he's very grateful for your continued support of all things technology and STEM in North Shore Middle School. So one of the things that we're going to present to you tonight is an ID badge made on our 3D printers. And I'm going to ask that the next time you're in our school, you stop down to Mr. Benfield's digital photography lab. He'll take a picture of you, put it here, and you can bring this to our school or any school next time you're around. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He's already got one. Oh, nice. Look at that.
Oh, really official.
Look at that with the. You can't see all the detail, but it's got the initials for North Shore, and it's got the Viking horns on it. It is beautifully done. Thank you.
And now, Principal Cousins from the high school.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be introducing to you members of RoboGym, the North Shore High School Robotics, who will be helping us in bringing to you a token of the high school's appreciation. So we're going to start with that, and then once that arrives, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory.
Oh my God.
So let's welcome RoboGym. We have Catherine, Leo, and Noel, along with the advisor, Mr. Stephen Peroni. I'm doing this, by the way, without any rehearsal.
It's a tight space.
Yeah. Oh my God, you nervous?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That is so
So what's really fascinating about this is inside the basket there are some gifts. So if everyone wants to pass it up.
We were happy to pass the basket, but we don't
Pass it.
want
You get to take it.
And why this is this represents coordination among a couple of departments.
Oh, look at that. Ooh.
Thank you. Oh, look at that. We'll
So-
show in case they don't.
Do a little Vanna White.
Right, well, these are beautiful.
All this
Look at that.
swag.
So what this is, if the audience wants to see it, this is actually a poster with the district logo that was used. They used the router, the CNC machine, which was a major investment for not just the robotics team, but for the entire school. So this particular project involved both Laura Green in the Media Arts, who took the logo and put it into, and did the drawing of it, basically redrew the drawing, and then CJ Gober, who really was did the bulk of this in the woodworking department in those classes. It was a combination of multimedia, the arts, as well as the advanced technology that we have at our school in order to do this. So these were all milled in here on our campus in our wood shop. And we were talking earlier, now that we have that technology, all of these parts that you see on here will be able to be fabricated on our campus. So our students are learning to use advanced technology in order to do this and other things, both artistic and from the engineering realm. So that was one thing that we wanted to show our appreciation. And then the advanced fashion classes also created some soft engineering for you as well to show their appreciation. So
I'm going
feel
to
free
use.
to pass along the hors d'oeuvres.
I'm using it right now. Look at that.
And we want to just express our appreciation for your continued support beyond the academics and recognizing all of these things that are so critical to the success of our students. And I think represented here tonight, within the arts, within all of these other domains, many of the students who are involved with those, that's the reason that they come to school, and they really find pure passion. And we really appreciate the amount of extensive support that the board gives to not only the school as a whole, but also to those other areas. We're very fortunate to have that type of technology and the support that comes directly from all of you. So,
Look at this.
Thank you. These are, the items are both so beautiful in and of themselves, and of course with the presentation on top. Thank you. These are really genuinely lovely things, and it is so wonderful to see what our students are capable of in producing. Thank you.
Today, Coordinating Council has the pleasure of introducing representatives of another segment of our district's population that you work tirelessly to take into account and represent with all decisions made. Mrs. Catherine Grande, a past Board of Ed trustee who worked in such capacity for 15 years, was unable to join us tonight, though she had planned to, due to unexpected circumstances. We would like to call upon Mr. Vito Palmieri to read a note from her and say a few words, with other representatives at his side.
I know most of you won't believe this, but I'm mistaken for Mrs. Grande often. But those of you who know the Grandes, Angelo and Catherine Grande, would know that the name Grande fits them perfectly, because in Italian that means someone grand. And both of them, Angelo and Catherine, have given so much to the district and so much of themselves, not only to the district but to the community at large and to the Sons of Italy, and they've been just magnificent role models for all of us to follow. Mrs. Grande left this note. I'm going to read it in her voice, so don't mistake her for me when I say it, but she says, "I'm sorry, but I'm unable to attend the board meeting this evening. I was very happy to serve on the North Shore School Board for 15 years. I was a former second grade teacher at the Glen Head School for 11 years. My two children attended the North Shore schools. My son graduated from Yale University and Georgetown Law School, and my daughter graduated from Connecticut College and Columbia Teachers College. My husband Angelo taught at the high school and middle school and retired after 32 years. I know there are times when you feel that being on the board is a thankless job, but I'm sure you realize it is not. When you are a board member, you know you put your whole heart into making your school district the best for all the students. As board members, I know you put in many hours into reading all materials and attending all the meetings, but in the end, you are satisfied. You may not always get a thank you, but you are appreciated. Keep up the good work, Mrs. Grande." On my own behalf, I'd like to thank you all. As many of you know and have ever dealt with me, I don't always agree with the politics of the board, but I respect the position. And it is a thankless job at times, and I know that. And it takes a lot of hours and dedication, because you not only do the great things that we have for the students, as you see here, but it's the community at large. The taxes and all the other things that come up, that affects everybody, from the elderly down to the kindergartner. So it's sometimes a thankless job, as Ms. Grande said, but it's a well-respected job, and a job that I thank you all for putting the time in, especially when nobody's getting paid. You guys actually do this to yourselves. So thank you very much. And I don't know if this is The Bachelor or what, but I'm supposed to give somebody a rose, right? So I'm going to give my friend here.
How sweet. Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much. Oh, I got the later.
I'll meet you in Holiday Ball.
And now lastly, we have our new assistant principal, Mr. Nelson.
First of all, on behalf of the middle school and Mr. Bennett, we had a great ID badge, but we also had our fax classes led by Ms. Miranda. As a token of their appreciation for everything that the board does, they wanted to think of a tasty treat that everybody could enjoy, and I won't be long because I don't want to keep you between you and your food. But they actually brainstormed ways to make a chocolate chip cookie a little bit more healthy. So instead of being so full of sugar and carbs and flour and things like that, what can we put into it to try to make it a little bit more, give it a little more fiber, give it a little more protein? And they actually found that you can grind up chickpeas and add that into the recipe. It doesn't have whole eggs, it has egg whites. I actually helped the class and I separated the eggs and the yolks and things like that. So it's actually a healthy version of a chocolate chip cookie that we hope you will enjoy. And it's being presented on, we're trying to repurpose as much as we can, so it's being presented on some of the cans you'll see over there that are creating the stands that hold the cookies are actually the chickpea cans that we use. So nothing went in the garbage, everything got reused, and we want you to enjoy it. So please, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I think, I'm guessing, I'm looking around, but I think we're all truly overwhelmed by the amount of time and planning that went into this and the thoughtfulness, even just in everyone coming tonight. And then not to mention the incredible abundance of gifts. Thank you. It has been a really lovely evening thus far. We've all really enjoyed it. And I think it's safe to say that the board volunteers, I mean, sometimes a sort of astonishing number of hours, but they do it out of their commitment to your schools and to your community. But nonetheless, to get a moment in which you get to sort of like hear and see and even taste what our students can do and what our educators were able to help them to be able to do makes it all the more rewarding and worthwhile. And we have each and every one of you to thank for that. And it's much more enjoyable than reading contracts and going through budget lines, as we'll do later. So we greatly appreciate the break in what we normally have to do. So many thanks to all of you for tonight. Many thanks to all of you who on such a regular basis do such a lovely job of saying thank you and noticing what we do. We do really appreciate it. And with that, I think it is entirely appropriate to take a break and enjoy some healthy cookies. Please join us. Thank you. Oh, and that was the jazz band in October. Don't miss the winter concert. No.
That was great. Thank you. I always thank you. Thank you.
I just have to say. Thank you. Clerk, thank you. We're just counting them off. All right.
I was getting my cookie.
I can't blame you. We are all still completely overwhelmed by the gifts, but we will nonetheless.
Can we make a special shout out to Coordinating Council for coordinating this entire...
You took the words out of my mouth, but yeah, I should let you do it.
Having been a Coordinating Council leader, I know the work that goes into this, but we did it, and I know they do it with pleasure and happiness to do it, and it's, I think even they're pleased when they see it all to come together, but it's very touching to see this. And if anything that our school produces, we're producing kind, decent citizens. So that's what really struck me most of this whole presentation. So thank you, Denise. And
Thank you.
Stella, I don't know where she went, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Coordinating Council. Okay. And I will bring us all back down to reality by asking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
A second? Yes, we have both. Okay, all in favor?
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
Thank you. Otherwise, in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on next to the report from the SGO, if they finished enjoying the snacks we provided tonight.
Yes. These cookies were very good, I have to admit. And the jazz band too, how about? They're amazing.
Amazing, as always.
So Michael gives his regards. He couldn't be here tonight as the college deadlines approach extremely quickly. I'm sure we all have our relationships with them. But first I'd like to talk about homecoming, which sadly the parade and the carnival got rained out, but we still had a wonderful showing by the soccer team in the morning as we won versus Manhasset, and then the football team tried their hardest and but still put on a good show. It was fun to watch.
And John, you know how I love to beat Manhasset. So
Yes.
that was a good,
Yes.
that was a good
Me
showing.
too.
In defense of the football team, they just got bumped up a division.
Yes,
They
that
did.
is fair. They do play very difficult teams now. Yeah. Okay.
Right, Dr. Z? Right, we love to beat Manhasset.
Okay, so before our homecoming, we also have our pep rally, which was a little bit different this year as we tried to incorporate some new events. We had our cage volleyball, as always, which is always a huge hit. The seniors won, which hopefully will foreshadow sports night a little bit. Also, we introduced our student-teacher basketball game and our string of basketball games, which it was an SGO-oriented idea, and I've been going around trying to get people's opinions, and it seems like it was the most popular thing out of the entire homecoming day, so that was really nice. And the teachers almost won. They tied, so it was interesting. In this coming week, we have Hollow Week, as we're calling it, where we're hopefully going to decorate the school in Halloween-themed, attire. And on Wednesday, all the kids and the teachers will dress up in costumes of their choosing, and it's always a really fun day for everybody because it's very interesting to see what people come up with. Students and teachers, that is. Teachers always have the best ones. More on, I guess, the senior class is pretty much faced completely with college deadlines. As I just mentioned with Michael, the early action deadline for almost every school is in a week from today. We've had students committing to schools already. We actually had a Yale commit last week, I believe.
Yep.
And so I just want to say, because tonight is Board Appreciation Night, to close this, I know first or secondhand, I guess, about all that goes into the board. And firsthand, I guess firsthand, I can say. I know how challenging it can be, and I know how much commitment goes into it, but I think you guys really do a fantastic job with everything that our school outputs. And so on behalf of myself and Michael, the SGO, and I guess the entire high school student body, thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
And now I'll go apply to college.
Yes,
I'm-
please. Godspeed. I skipped you. The report of the superintendent?
I'm not applying to college tonight, so
Uh,
I could wait.
No, that's fair. Thank you for your...
All right, good luck, John. Welcome. Okay, so I'm going to try to, we have a lot going on here tonight, so I'm going to try to keep this reasonably brief. But that said, we do also have a lot of good things happening, so I want to make sure that you know what they are. So I will add to the chorus of thanking our members of the board for your commitment and your hard work and your dedication to the North Shore schools. And I also would like to thank the coordinating council for organizing really a lovely, lovely evening. It is pretty amazing to sit here and watch
all this cool stuff happen in 5 different schools and over K through 12, and all very meaningful things and very personal. It's really quite something. So thank you all very much, and to our principals and teachers who helped to make it happen, thank you very much. I want to welcome our elementary leadership team tonight. So Mrs. Nimmo is here, Mrs. Finder, Dr. Zublionis, Mrs. Small, and Dr. Smythe are here. And they are going to be talking with the board and the community about elementary achievement. And I want to just take a minute before you get started on the front end to thank you for your very, very strong leadership in ensuring strong outcomes for our students. I'm really pleased by what you put together here tonight. This is an incredibly strong team. They are student-focused, they are driven by student need, and I'm really fortunate to work with all of you, so thank you very, very much. In addition to the grades 3 through 8 ELA and math scores, we've spent time thinking through achievement in multiple ways. And as someone who was a qualitative researcher, I'm always interested in the stories of people, their contexts, and the data points that complete a full picture. So when we look at what's measurable and quantitative, the results are excellent, and we'll hear about those tonight. When we look at what is more qualitative, the results are equally impressive in their formative stages, and we're looking forward to expanding upon our organizational capacity to do this even more and better. So by doing so, we strengthen the teaching and learning process, and I believe strongly that when we teach well, the tests take care of themselves, and test prep is virtually not needed. So as a total aside, I've been reading to kindergartners and first graders over the past few weeks. Been having a ton of fun. Ask your first graders, if you haven't done so yet, what it means to be an upstander. And I will apologize in advance if there are a run on requests for puppies among kindergartners. Guilty as charged. And I don't have a puppy at home, so I'm really guilty. Right, so we've been
Maybe you want to watch your mail.
So we've been having a lot of fun with the pigeon books in kindergarten together. So I'll be scheduling 2nd and 3rd grade visits in the upcoming weeks, and it's just nothing brings you more joy than sitting with a bunch of kids and reading books. So that's that. The work of the strategic plan is starting to really come to life. Our upcoming conference day in November will address anti-bias training across the district. We have 5 high school students who will be participating in a county-wide leadership forum on issues of equity. And we're planning district-wide events for all students in grades 4 through 8 on the topic of empowering girls, and that will happen in the early part of the winter. Our various committees and task forces are beginning to form and meet, and we are making plans for the continued analysis of all of our programs. I have to tell you, I am excited. It's really good stuff. I want to provide a brief update to the board on our work in safety and security. So we are going to plan a very full, well-advertised, comprehensive update to the board and community on November 29. And we'll talk about the progress that we've made thus far, where our planning has been in our short-term and our medium-term and our long-term plans as it relates to our protocols and practices, and also some of our facilities plans and the like. So in the meantime, we are making plans to install a central monitoring station in the district through a grant that we've received. And as I mentioned to the board via my letter this last week, I would like to consider the feasibility of contracting for a part-time safety coordinator. We're making some good progress with our plans, but we are struggling with managing all the implementation and tracking projects in the ways that we really would like to be able to do that. So we can talk about this a little bit later, but with the board's approval, I would like to move forward with obtaining a proposal, and then we'll bring that back and talk about how to move that along. I don't think we need anybody full-time at this point, but I do need, I am in need of assistance with just having somebody be assigned to this kind of work within the district. Lastly, the data collection process to inform the pre-bond referendum process has been moving, but will begin in a little bit more earnest next week. Tina and Daryl, who were here at our last meeting, they are going to be in the district all day one day next week, meeting with administrators about their instructional programs and program and facility needs. And then shortly thereafter, we'll convene the Bond Steering Committee and the Bond Advisory Committee, and then start to think about how we can widen our capacity for input from the community. So a lot of moving parts right now, but things are starting to click and in a good way. And before I forget, these socks that you have for the board, those are from the athletic department. So enjoy. Thank you all very much. That's what I've got.
Thank you. We are going to move on to our next item, which is in fact the elementary report on student achievement.
Great. So welcome, all.
Welcome and thank you.
And I do, before you get started, I do want to thank Rob Klabicki for his leadership in pulling all this together as well. He did a lot of organizing on this and worked very closely on this project, so thank you. What do you want to do?
If you can see the screen, we're good, but if anyone can't and you want to reposition, please do.
Okay, so good evening. Welcome to the report on student achievement for the elementary schools. I'm Bridget Finder, the principal of Glenwood Landing School, and I just want to introduce our team. I know you know all of them, Dr. Z, Dr. Smythe, Ms. Nimmo, and Ms. Small. So the first portion of tonight's presentation will focus on student achievement at the elementary level on standardized assessments. You will hear about the areas of strength and areas of focus in math, ELA, and science, and our action plans to address the areas of focus. While our students perform well on standardized assessments, here at North Shore, as you know, we value so much more, which is why the second half of the presentation will show achievement in the shared valued outcomes through authentic assessment. Tonight, we plan to provide a snapshot of our ongoing efforts to show achievement in the shared valued outcomes and content areas. In addition, we will share with you how we are coming together as a district to offer common, authentic assessment opportunities for all students. Up first, we have Dr. Smythe.
Okay, good evening. Data from the range of assessments that we have within our assessment system suggest that our students' achievement continues to grow over time. This is the result of our students' effort and engagement in their learning, our teachers' dedication and embrace of our philosophy and approach to instruction, our opportunities for incredibly high-quality professional development, and our attention to the shared valued outcomes. This evening, I'm going to share with you information from the STAR assessment and the New York State assessments. The STAR assessment is a research-based and norm-referenced computer adaptive system that we use to measure our students' progress in math content knowledge and skill proficiency. Snapshots give us the percentage of students performing at or above grade level. If we track the progress of our students, our current second grade cohort, from their time in first grade, you'll see increases in the number of students performing at or above grade level. More importantly, we use this information about each student's math learning to drive our instruction and to drive our intervention with students so that we really are able to support each student's growth over time. Now I'd like to turn my attention to the state test scores. So you will notice that the majority of our students perform above grade level. The proficiency rates are very high in math, ranging from 86 to 93, with all of our students achieving proficiency on the science test. In addition, the mastery rates are also very high. On the math assessment, the mastery rates ranged from 50 to 69% in math, and then in science, 87%. So we're very proud of that. The percentage of students opting out of assessments are also high. You'll notice that the percentage of students opting out of the math assessments are in the 20s. This raised questions with us about the representativeness of this data and our ability to draw conclusions. So what we did is we looked at cumulative assessments that are common to all students. So all students take our own common internal assessments, and what we did is we correlated the performance of those students who took the state assessment with their performance on our own local assessment. We found that the correlation was very high, so what we did in order to test whether these data are representative, we used the performance on our own standardized assessment, our own norm local assessment, to predict performance on the state assessment. And what you'll notice is our predicted performance of the students who opted out of the assessment is very similar to the students who took the assessments. So we feel fairly confident that the information from the state assessment is representative of the population and that we can draw good conclusions from the data about the progress of our students. One thing that we also looked at was who are the students who are opting out of the assessment. One of the things that we noted was that many of our students who are identified as students with disabilities opted out of the assessment. Though the cohorts are small, the percentages of those students who opted out of the assessment were much higher than the number of students who opted out who were not classified as having disabilities. So we are careful about making interpretations about the performance of that cohort, and it is something worth investigating further. Now we'll turn our attention to the longitudinal trends over time. One thing to be careful of in terms of making decisions about this data is that the format of the test between last year and this year changed. So that limits some of the conclusions we can draw about the assessments. But you will note, for example, first we'll look at third grade. The proficiency rates and the mastery rates have increased over time. Similarly in fourth grade. Similarly in fifth grade. When we look at the science test, our performance continues to be very strong and steady over time. Okay. Next thing we'll do is we'll look at our performance compared to comparison districts. The districts that we usually compare ourselves, the local high-achieving districts, are the ones that are listed here. So what we did is we looked at how our students performed in proficiency and mastery compared to those districts. So if we look at the third grade assessment, those are the proficiency rates, the mastery rates, and to orient you, the red is the performance of North Shore students, and the gray on the end is the performance of Nassau County students. You'll note that North Shore students in third grade, the proficiency rate and the mastery rates ranked 5th around those comparison districts. As we look at the fourth grade students, similarly, the proficiency rates and the mastery rates, again in red is our performance, and you'll notice in fourth grade, the proficiency and the mastery rates ranked 2nd among those comparison districts. In fifth grade, a very similar picture. And again, the proficiency and the mastery rates ranked 2nd among those comparison districts. So we really use this data not only to compare ourselves to others, but to look at our strengths and our areas of focus for the future. So in terms of an area of strength, one thing that we're particularly proud of is our students' performance in terms of working with numbers, particularly whole numbers, and then decimals and fractions as they get older. This is, if we look at the performance on particular domains of the exam, so numbers and operations and algebraic thinking, and measurement and data, those are all domains that involve students' work with numbers. We've spent a lot of time working on how our kids think about numbers, how they work with numbers, particularly with our work around Singapore math. You'll notice the gaps in achievement are all positive numbers. The gaps indicate how the students perform as compared to those other surrounding districts in Nassau County. A positive gap indicates that our students are performing better than the county average. If it were a negative gap, that would mean they were performing less well, but they're all positive gaps and fairly strong. So we're very happy with the work our students are doing with number. An area of progress that we're also very proud of is our students' work with problem solving. Over the past few years, we've adopted a philosophy of math learning K-12 in our district. At its heart is our students' growth as problem solvers. We've devoted a lot of time and energy into improving our students' proficiency as problem solvers, particularly as they work with application problems and novel problems. Novel problems are those that involve situations they haven't seen before. And as you look at the performance in terms of the percentage of points the students achieved on the assessment and the gaps between our students' performance and others, the students are doing very well and improving over time with respect to their problem solving. And we're very proud of that, and we hope to continue that because that problem solving is going to help them over time. The work we've done around the shared valued outcomes, particularly of thinkers and problem solvers, has also supported this work. In terms of our areas of focus in math, one thing that we want to highlight are the performance of certain subgroups in the population. With respect to 3 subgroups, we're seeing that there are differences in the proficiency rates and the mastery rates. Those are students that are classified as having disabilities, ethnicity, and our English language learners. So if we take a look, the proficiency rates and the mastery rates of students who are classified as disabilities are very different. Similarly, if we look at the performance of our Hispanic students, again, the cohort is small, but we'll see very large differences in the performance in proficiency and mastery rate. And finally, and similarly, for our English language learners, we see differences in the proficiency rates and the mastery rates. What we plan to do is to continue to investigate those differences and to really think about how can we support the growth of those subgroups of our population. A second area of focus across the elementary schools is our students' abilities to communicate their mathematical thinking. Though we've shown tremendous growth in their problem solving, our next layer of work really revolves around the communication and their ability to explain and articulate their mathematical thinking. This item that you see on the screen is one from the state assessments this year. And you'll note what it requires is for students to be able to not only do the math, but also to be able to articulate the reasons behind it. And though our students did well on this item and similar items, they did not do as well as they did on other items. So we really dug into how do we continue to help them grow and to be able to really explain their thinking. Our lesson structure that's associated with our math philosophy is helping us do this work, and we've also, across the elementary schools, focused on incorporating journaling as a way for students to really be able to grow in this area. So it's a concerted effort across our elementary schools. Okay, turning our attention to science for just a moment. Again, the students performed exceptionally well on the assessment. In terms of areas of strength, we saw across content domains, both in the living environment and the physical sciences, that students performed very well. Our students know a lot of science, which is really what this test measures. And we're proud that not only in the living environment, but also in the physical setting, the students are doing well. We've spent a lot of attention on trying to grow our students' experiences and achievement in physical sciences. An area of progress that we've seen over time is our students' performance in measurement. What we've really tried to do, and you'll see the growth in terms of the performance on measurement items from last year to this year, is to help them draw connections between the measurement work that they do in math, the measurement work that they do in science, and the measurement work they do in general, so that they become better, have a deeper understanding of measurement and better skill proficiency with measurement, and we're seeing a lot of progress with that. Finally, in terms of next steps with science, we're very excited with the unrolling of the new science standards. They're really very much aligned with our philosophy of learning, and what they really involve is this type of three-dimensional learning, which is learning that really incorporates the disciplinary core ideas, which is the content, the practices of science and engineering, and the cross-cutting concepts that we want kids to develop understanding of. So these standards allow us to bring those together in truly rich learning experiences for students. So we're really excited about the work we've done in that, and we look forward to continuing that work. In addition, we're also looking to the growth of our elementary STEAM program, which we're very much excited about. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Small.
There we go.
You good?
There, presenter view.
I don't have my glasses.
This one is it, right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the technical assistance.
You good?
Thank you. In the English language arts, our students continue to achieve at high levels. Although we had about a third of the students opt out, for the students who did take the test, at levels 3 and 4, which is the proficient levels, we had 85% of third graders performing at that level, 86% of fourth graders, and 71% of fifth graders. Looking over time, as Dr. Smythe pointed out, we were advised by BOCES that because the format of the test has changed, it used to be given across 3 days, now it's a 2-day test, it may be hard to compare 2018 to previous years. That said, you can see a trend over time in which here for third grade,
Hey, Deborah.
percent of proficiency. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just talk into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
You can see a trend over time as our proficient students have, our levels of proficiency have increased over time. And the smaller bars are our levels of mastery, which is level 4 on the state test. Those also have continued to increase over time. The same pattern holds in 4th grade and also in 5th grade. Comparing our district to other districts, you can see we have in gray the Nassau County averages. We have our North Shore and North Shore red, and then all the other districts listed in blue with their names underneath. In terms of our achievement in 3rd grade, we are the 4th highest in our level of proficiency and the 5th highest in our level of mastery. In 4th grade, we have the 2nd highest proficiency number and the 3rd highest mastery number compared to our comparison group. And in 5th grade, we have the 4th highest mastery level, but the proficiency level, but the 2nd highest mastery level. So our students are doing very well in comparison to other districts. Most importantly, we look at what the data can show us in terms of the strengths of our students and our areas for growth. When we analyze the strength, each year we look at the gap report, which Dr. Smythe described earlier. Usually, there's at least a couple questions where our students have more trouble and where we might be below the county average. This year, in all 3 grades, all 3 tests, there was not a single question in any grade in which the district performed under the county average. In addition, we notice a particular strength. You'll see on this chart, there's a section for all questions and for written response questions. There are 2 types of questions on the test. There are multiple choice questions, and there are also questions where the students are required to write. Our students do very well on both kinds. In terms of the percentage above the county average in total points earned per question, we exceeded it by a fair amount on all of our questions, but the difference becomes even more pronounced in terms of our questions where our students had to write. Our students write very well. I credit that to our writing workshop, in which our students are immersed every single day Our teachers have worked very hard on the writing workshop. We use materials from Teachers College. In addition, we have had sustained professional development with Teachers College staff developers, as well as with our literacy coaches within each building. Tonight, I'm excited to show you later in the presentation, we're going to take a look at some of the work that our children do in writing. You will see the rubrics that our students compare their writing against to help them grow. You will see a sample of 2 students engaged in a peer writing conference and helping each other. And you will also see how our students take what they learn from writing in terms of their ability to express themselves, to pull up important evidence, and most of all, to use their voice when they apply that to a social studies project. So you can see how across disciplines, the work that they develop through writing carries over. We also took a look to see were there any areas for growth. One area that we saw is, although our students did well on all questions, in the area of vocabulary, some of our students who struggled did less well. So we took a look at that. And these are a couple of examples of the types of questions that were challenging. So in 4th grade, you can see that the students had to figure out the meaning of the word mournful as it's used in a particular paragraph within the text. On the second question, you can see that there's a sentence, if she could catch a tiny breeze, her kite would fly. And then the children had to decide which meaning of the word catch was the correct one through that sentence. So they had to really think about meaning and context. Now, the fascinating thing about this area as an area identified to work on is that our teachers already knew that. We didn't find out the test results until August of this year. But in the winter, our teachers get together and make our plan for what we want to work on over the summer, and we identify vocabulary as an area to work on. So this summer, we got together and we studied the best practices in vocabulary instruction. And our teachers worked and put into the curriculum these best practices so that we continue to build our students' vocabularies and their ability to identify words in context. Another area for growth was not another standard. There weren't other standards that stood out in particular, but there were question types that stood out. And I've said this to you before. This is something that we continue to work on across the years. This year, our students showed growth because we didn't have any negative gaps in these areas. But when we looked at our students who earned 1s and 2s, we did see that this was an area that was difficult for our children. I want to tell you about the types of questions. So, one type of question is the question that compares 2 paragraphs. How does paragraph 9 compare to paragraph 6? Now, you can note that for a young child, that means they have to flip back in the test book to where the passage is, find paragraph 9, find paragraph 6. It certainly is a challenging task, but it is of some value because it does get the students thinking about how one part of what they read connects to another, which is an important thing to be able to do as a reader, a researcher. Another type of question that was challenging for our students was the kind that required you to weigh evidence. For example, based on paragraphs 5 and 6, which sentence best contrasts Mrs. Majeska and the children? So all of those sentences you can make a case for based on the passage, but you had to think about which was the absolute best example. And again, that's something that comes in use for our students. If you're going to write and you want to, as a writer, decide what the best evidence is, if you're reading and you're considering as a reader and a researcher what evidence carries the most weight with you and what you should pay attention to and what things seems like kind of weak arguments to you, these are important skills. So we will continue to work with our kids on this type of question, but more importantly, on the skills underlying them. We also took a look at the different subgroups. Whereas in many subgroups, there was not a consistent pattern across years or across grade levels, there were a couple areas that stood out in our minds. One of those areas was students with disability. As you can see, in terms of the proficiency rate for students with disabilities, it lags behind our students without disabilities by about 30%. So we're working very closely together. I've actually been working very closely with Francine Palladino and Chris Marino, working to make sure that we align the work of our special ed department with the work of our reading teachers and classroom teachers in order to help the students make the greatest growth possible. Over the summer, we had our ILC teachers came in, and we worked hard together in looking at how we adapt the curriculum in order to make sure that the students have exposure to the state standards and are scaffolded for success with those, but also that we work hard to close the gap and to target instruction for the children where they are, so that if the expected performance is here and they're here, that we are working to steadily lift their performance and eliminate the gap with interventions that will help them to do so. In all of our classes, ILC, ICT, all our classes, we continue to work on scaffolding towards the grade level standards for students who need that, and making sure that we use the best of our reading and writing workshops to provide one-on-one support and individualized goal work with our students to help them to close the gap. Another area that we noticed a gap is gender, that with the boys lagging behind the girls by 10%. One thing we know about reading is that the more volume you do, the more you read, the higher your scores are likely to be, the better a reader you're likely to be. So one project that our librarians are working on this year is trying to find the titles and make a list of some of the, and make sure that we get the best literature that's most appealing to boys into the hands of our boys. So that is a focus of ours going forward. Finally, while I can speak with great pride of how our students did in the aggregate and how well our students do on average, we feel very passionate that we want every single child in our district to succeed and to do well. So one thing that we do is we really pay attention to every individual student. So 3 times a year for grades 1 through 5 and 4 times a year in grade kindergarten, we meet to review their literacy progress in what we call data days. At the data days, we view assessment data from the Fontes and Pinnell benchmarking reading assessments that we do with the students, Dibbles assessments, Teachers College assessments, and classroom assessments administered by the teachers. As part of that data review, we consult with all members of a student's teaching team, every adult who works with the child. And together we work to develop a plan of action for students that are performing below the benchmark to make sure that they make gains. Intervention could take place sometimes right in the classroom, where the teacher will just target a particular type of work with the child, and sometimes we have other providers helping and providing support for the children as well. It is our hope to be able to appropriately support and challenge every child in the North Shore schools to do his or her personal best. And with that, we will move into our authentic assessment portion to show you some of the work we do with that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to speak to you tonight about our work as an elementary team on the shared valued outcomes, and outcomes not necessarily measured by standard assessments. I want to first start off by saying how appreciative we are for you to work for a board and a superintendent in a district that honors such worthy outcomes as the shared valued outcomes. Because as educators, we know that these are the outcomes that make a tremendous impact on our kids' lives, not only in their academic work, which we do believe there's a real connection to our focus on the shared valued outcomes and the success that they're having on standardized assessments, but also throughout their lives as students inside of school and outside of school. Whether it's at recess or in the gym, on the lacrosse field, or at NISMA, the focus on the shared valued outcomes is equipping our students to have great lives and to carry and transfer their learning from outside of school into their lives outside of school. And so we are trying to answer the difficult questions of what does successful communication look like? How do we know our students have achieved as expert thinkers? How do we know that our students are truly committed to others or are good citizens? These are questions that are difficult to answer with standardized assessments, but we believe we have found a good match in the measurement of achievement in these areas with authentic assessment. Authentic assessment uses real-world tasks and performances and presentations to measure things such as deep understanding,
how students can apply skills and those deep understandings to real-time activities and real-time situations, and also how students are able to reflect on, internalize, and strategically use complex values like the shared valued outcomes. Now, work in authentic assessment formally actually started in 2012 when Dr. Smythe actually led one of the first PADI teams. PADI, the Performance Assessment Design Initiative, which was sponsored by Tri-States, formally trained a lot of our educators and almost all of our administrators in how to design authentic assessments that engage students in real-world performances, presenting to authentic audiences, and to build into those authentic assessments learning progressions and rubrics that allowed us to measure skills like the shared valued outcomes in empirical ways and real accurate ways. As we began to expand our involvement in PADI, at the same time we formally began our focus on the shared valued outcomes in 2014. As that started to happen, we began to purposefully integrate the shared valued outcomes into these performance-based authentic assessments. And now in the last 2 years, what we are doing is really looking at how we can measure the shared valued outcomes and achievement in the SVOs on a district-wide level. So the work that you're going to see tonight is unique and different from the work you saw last year. Last year, each building presented what we were doing separately. Tonight, we are presenting to you what we have worked on as a whole district. So the pictures you're seeing, the videos you're seeing, you could walk into any classroom and see that work at Glenwood Landing, Seacliff, or Glen Head. And that is the direction that we hope to go in. As Dr. Giarrizzo mentioned earlier, the shared valued outcomes are harder to measure. And so what we're trying to do, and because we're so supportive of the work and believe in the work, we have a responsibility to show achievement in those areas and then respond to that achievement data in strategic ways. So we're ensuring that students are growing in the shared valued outcomes and in the sub-skills in the SVOs. So you'll see qualitative ways of achievement, of showing achievement that are different than standardized assessments. But I think you will get the sense that our students are achieving. And we focused in this presentation on communication and thinking, which were the district focus, SVOs of focus. The first project we're going to show you is a 4th grade project that was actually facilitated by Miss Deborah Small. And this was one of the first projects where we were moving away from the PADI training. So I want to thank you too for the investment in the PADI training, because we're now moving away. The sign that the PD, the professional development, was successful is that we're doing it independently now. And so we have a tremendous amount of internal capacity, K through 12, not just elementary teams, but a lot of middle school and high school teams where these types of projects were written. And so this one was done fairly independently and with 4th grade teachers from all 3 elementary buildings. Students were asked in this project to connect a social issue that's current to one that was historical. 4th grade students were studying American history in the late 19th and early 20th century, and specifically social reforms in those eras. Things like the civil rights movement, the abolitionist movement, immigration rights movements, women's suffrage earlier on in the 20th century. And so what they needed to do was to connect current issues to those historical issues. And they also needed to take a stand on the issue, explain why it was important, and then also develop a clear argument for how it could best be solved. And they needed to present that argument in some way. They could present a speech, they could present a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to show you a very creative example in 1 second. Here's a clip of 4th grade teacher Lindsay Fibus talking about the project.
I think that this project allowed for the most choices that the students had seen last year, and it really allowed them to choose the right mode of communication for their topic. So some students might have been interested in a play, but they felt that a letter would bring across their point and their thesis, really, of their writing, their convincing statement. They thought that a letter would be better than a play. Or some kids thought that a play would be more convincing than a letter. So they really were allowed to, based on what they're interested in, but also based on the topic that they chose, find the best mode of communication for that. I think...
So this is an example actually from Ms. Vibus's class called The Gender Game. This was a group of boys who decided to illustrate the issue of gender discrimination by creating a game in which players would have to move through the game and overcome hurdles that were similar to current forms of gender discrimination. And so they presented the game, but then part of the presentation was also students playing the game. So creative project of that sort. How do we know then that students are actually growing and showing achievement from a project like this? One way is that we ask students essential questions at the beginning of a project and at the end. And we'll ask students to talk about these questions and also write freely on them without assistance to see how their deep understanding is changing. And if you take a look at these questions, these are questions that you could answer or pose to students in an AP World History class about the Peloponnesian War, or about IB History of the Americas, about the Civil War. So these are questions that it would be interesting to see how they grow, the answers grow in complexity from 4th grade through 12th grade. But even within this project, and this is a time span of 3 weeks, this is the same student before the project on the left, after the project on the right. To the essential question, what does it mean to be free? This student first answered, to not cost money. After the project, the answer, it means to not be controlled by someone, like slaves were not free. For example, some people are not free like slaves. We all have roles, but not like that. In another sample, again, in orange before the project, in the answer to the question, how do people's actions impact times of change? The answer, people's early actions, whether they're nice or mean, decides what will happen later. After the project, the student answered, join the side that you think is right, not the one that's popular, because it will have an impact on your choices later on, such as Rosa Parks, who went through going to jail just to achieve what she wanted. So we can see a growing in the sophistication of the understanding of the social studies learning standard, but also in their thinking ability. One tool that we use with performance-based assessments to make the measurement of achievement more empirical and not just guesswork is a rubric or a learning progression. There is a difference between the two. This is a rubric, and it's a growing of skills and performance from just starting to, in this case, the teacher labeled a progressing column, to an on there column, to pushing myself further, to an extra level of achievement. What's amazing about these tools, and sometimes students will take them and put them into their own words to digest and process the expectations. What's amazing at this is a great tool for students to personalize instruction because they analyze their own work, and they might see that their work is at the brainstorming column, just starting to, and then they set goals and work with other students and their teacher to make changes to their own work, develop it, so that they can get to that higher level of explaining the benefits of an action as well as the consequences. And what we did see, and I do believe one area of focus for us is to chart this district-wide as we begin to incorporate these projects more, but we did see a majority of students independently work towards that last column. And so if we were to look at more of the finished products as a whole and show you work samples, you would see the evolution from, just like the Post-its, but more in project-based work, that just starting to column to the pushing myself further column. This is a great tool for the shared valued outcomes. Students also communicated about their thinking, gave each other feedback, and practiced the SVOs of communication and thinking while they gave each other feedback, made their feedback more specific, practiced their listening skills to their peers. But then we also had students assess themselves on the SVOs. And in this case, in this project, and this is what teachers are starting to do in the design of these projects, is they embed progressions of the shared valued outcomes, defining the sub-skills of the shared valued outcomes into the learning progressions, and students are working with those to really process the pieces of the shared values and determine what they need to do to improve in those. So again, they're deepening their understanding, they're using and applying the SVOs, and they're internalizing and reflecting on them so they carry them out of the 4th grade classroom to lunch, to recess, onto the soccer field. So that deep process work has a tremendous impact. There's actually been a lot of recent work done on meta-studies of student success. The most well-known that educators are talking about right now is by John Hattie, who's a professor from New Zealand. His work in Visible Thinking, he rated the major impacts on student success. He looked at hundreds of studies, and the number one impact that had the biggest multiplier effect was student self-reporting. We believe this work that students are doing by looking at their work, setting goals, and then changing and revising their work fits into that self-reporting category. And to be honest, we think, and we have to do a better job of charting this, but this is also having another reverse impact effect on standardized test achievement as well, by focusing on the SVOs, not by focusing on test prep, by focusing on the SVO work. Another form of achievement data that we look at are the voices of students themselves. And this is something we'll often use in kindergarten when we ask students to, it's harder for them to write, it's harder for them to produce written work, we'll ask pre and post a question, but we also ask older students that question as well. So each of these videos, and every building in the district is represented, is a short clip of students talking about how they were impacted and what they did in this project.
Project about? My project was about the problem of equal pay for women and how the problem was like how women couldn't even work when they in earlier years. And now we're still fighting for equal pay.
Sure. Can you explain again a little bit more detail how that problem changed in time, like how the history of it helped inform what you're working on now and what changed? So in history, once upon a time.
In history, women couldn't even have jobs like be doctors. They could only really be teachers and like take care of their kids at home. But now women have really like evolved and they're changing the world but they're still not like completely equal pay. I came up with one solution that they should have tryouts for certain teams, and there shouldn't be separate leagues for women and men. They should play together.
One thing I want to note is that these videos were actually taken this fall in preparation for the presentation, so we were a little nervous about that, but also it was evidence of the sticking of the transfer that students now, 5-6 months later, had remembered the project and internalized what they're talking about to that extent.
I actually feel like a lot of my vocabulary changed. Between all the words I had to learn, all the people I had to say, and a lot of people there had different languages, so I really had to study a lot of the like words they said, and I really I really had to be specific in my project because I really had to get my message out to my audience, and I really had to just really have good vocabulary.
And how did you feel what did you feel you learned about being able to communicate that message to an audience through your project? Like, how did you become better at the way you were speaking or writing or presenting?
I felt like for this one, it was a really strong, like, girls need help with their sports, like, it's not being too fair. Like, I felt like I could, because I'm not, like one of those people who really like standing up in front of a bunch of people talking. And then I felt like this one, I was okay with it because it's like, this was like really like something they had to hear about. They had to know what's going on. Like, they had to change really quickly.
So it was important for you to stand up and say that.
It's important for me to get over my fear because this is something strong, and I'm a girl, and I need them to know that we need help with our sports.
So district-wide, students in 4th grade, as a result of this project in all 3 buildings, developed an explanation for how a current social issue related and connected to a historical social issue. They developed an argument. They used their thinking skills to make an argument for the best solution or solutions to that issue. And then they also presented that argument and communicated it to their peers and also to an authentic audience. However, we still need to do more work in assessing and analyzing student rubrics and work product from across the district to identify in a very empirical way what are those areas where students need to still grow as thinkers and communicators. Maybe they're overreaching where we're aiming for, and so we need to make our work more challenging. So that's the kind of analytical work that would fit into our next steps as a result of this project. In addition to projects, we're also engaging students in authentic learning tasks in the way that they learn in both math and literacy. We're going to talk about literacy. Students across the district, and this is not just in 4th grade, but if you walked into any 2nd grade through 5th grade classroom in any building into their literacy time, you would see students doing a lot of independent thinking, reflecting on their work, setting goals, using learning progressions. These are learning progressions from Teachers College, where they spell out specifically where students' level of writing is or level of reading thinking is. They have to locate themselves in that progression and just like in the project, set next steps to move forward. And so here's an excerpt from the narrative writing progression from Teachers College. And so sitting in a grade 4 level, this is where the growth comes in. For a grade 5 student, or for a grade 4 student who needs to be stretched to that next level, who's already at that grade 4 level, the question is, how do we move from the current level where the student locates himself or herself to that next level? And the student is an active participant in working through that and working through that independently with teacher facilitation. Teacher as guide, as probing questioner, not as presenter of information. So it also builds this sense of commitment to self and independence as well. That is where the growth happens. And here's another excerpt from the narrative writing progression if we look at kindergarten to 2nd grade to 5th grade. Another piece of what students do, and again, if you walked into any classroom, and now even starting in math lessons, students are giving themselves feedback that is specific, and they're working on their listening skills to take feedback and apply it to their work. Here's a sample from a 2nd grade classroom.
Well, I went to the stuff machine and put stuff in him. Then we put a heart in him. Then we gave him an outfit. It wasn't an outfit. Then I gave him a name. I named him Dinner.
So I think of Lucas and Maggie 20 years from now working at Google or some company that no longer exists, and with more sophistication, although this is for 2nd grade, this is highly independent, and it actually is, if we compared it to feedback that they were giving at the end of 1st grade or the beginning of 2nd grade, and we also now showed you this versus 3rd or 4th grade, you would see the progression of complexity of feedback. Just sitting in a 4th grade lesson last week and seeing the level of feedback in a math lesson that was being given from peer to peers. But it's real world, it's authentic in the sense of this is how people work with each other. This is how administrators work in a school district. This is how people work in companies. And so they're learning those thinking and communication skills that mirror real world living. So the summary of achievement in this case, and this is much more grade-wide, multiple grades, and district-wide. These are regular practices where students are self-assessing their thinking, they're communicating feedback to each other, they're setting new goals, they're using that feedback, and students are becoming owners of their own learning. They're using their thinking and communication skills to personalize and drive their own learning. We certainly have to-dos here to chart the growth, the quality of student goal setting and the feedback that they're giving, and to measure that as a form of measuring communication and thinking. We also see outside of the school day achievement in thinking and communication, and we have to be more deliberate about how we chart this. But we're proud of the work that our students are doing and having success in the Wonder League coding and other competitions, in their increasing rates every year in music competitions like NISMA and NISMA Majors, and other fine and performing arts competitions. In the recycling campaign and the presentation that many of our students gave to the board last spring, the high participation that the Glen Head students mentioned today, that we did have in other smaller ways in the other schools, the Let Grow initiative, and also every year our mock trial team from each building regularly defeats older students in other districts. Again, it's not about the competition, but it's about the confidence and the success that they have in facing such a challenging, intimidating situation. Again, demonstrating their mastery of communication and thinking skills. We need to do a better job of making sure that more of those experiences are assured to all students in electives and other cycle options, things like Genius Hour throughout the school day, and not just an option that they can choose. But also we have to map in more specific ways how that achievement connects to our curriculum and the work that we're doing regularly. And Ms. Nimmo is now going to talk to you about overall next steps in our work of SVO growth and authentic assessment.
Thank you so much.
So while we're pleased with the efforts that we've done so far, we still have a great deal of work to do. First of all, we would like to continue to create authentic performance-based units. Currently, we have two, one in grade 2 and one in grade 4, and our work now, our focus will be on making sure that we create units of study in all of the other grades. We are looking to provide professional development in the use of the newly created learning progressions, particularly those related to thinkers and communicators. We're in the process of planning that professional development, and we're looking forward to rolling that out with our teachers. And then in the process of being created are the progressions for problem solvers and committed individuals. So we're looking to do that work in the very near future. We also want to begin to analyze the authentic assessment and the learning information related to the subcomponents of the SVOs. We want to chart specific areas of strength and gaps within our program, and we want to look at that in terms of the work that we have done. This is a very challenging thing to do, because when you're working with habits of mind, it's not so easy to be able to measure it, but we're committed to this work, as you already heard. And lastly, we want to think about, and I think Dr. Z just explained that, we want to look at the connections between growth in the SVOs and learning in all of the extracurricular opportunities that we provide. We want to begin to suggest matches for those opportunities and match students to opportunities to push them based on not only their strengths but their needs. And we want to find ways to provide targeted instruction. If we know that there are needs, we want to be able to create opportunities in extracurricular areas for the learning to take place during the school day and after as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really incredibly informative. I can't imagine the time that went into putting that together for us. It is greatly appreciated. The information is important and critical and central to what we do. I think the data you shared on equity was important. On places we could go next was greatly appreciated. I appreciate the work on tracking the impact on the opt-outs. That could not have been easy to put those numbers together, but it has absolutely been a question in the community, and I'm not shocked, but I greatly appreciate having the data behind it. And I don't feel like I've heard as clear a description of how we try to measure the SVOs as we saw tonight, and I think that's important, and I'm scheming about, how to get people to watch the video, right, and try to, to have more of our community understand what we're doing here. But I want to open it up to our trustees. I want to see if anyone has any questions or comments they want to share. I have one question later, but it might be obscure. Trustee?
Good evening. Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation.
I just have one sort of question about the data and the opt-outs. Not that I'm placing an emphasis on that, but I understand how you correlated the data with the opt-outs, but when we do the comparison with the other districts, do we look at their opt-out numbers and do we take that into account when we're comparing achievement? So when you look at some place like maybe Manhasset that has a much lower opt-out rate, and Locust Valley, which has a comparable, I believe is coming to be about a comparable opt-out rate as we have. How do you take that into, can you, and how do you factor that in when you look at these charts?
It's difficult to know who in those districts is opting out, so any of the cross-district comparisons are limited by, we know who our students are who opted out, but we don't know of those other districts. We do have to take those cross-district comparisons with a grain of salt.
All right, so is there another way that we can measure student, I understand how you're doing it in our district, and I think it's important, but if someone were to come in here, a community member, and ask us, is there another way that you, working with your cohorts, because I know you sometimes do cross-district work, compare, what data do you have to compare the achievement in, let's say, our school district with Manhasset or Jericho or a Great Neck? Is there some other measure that is used to see where our students stand vis-a-vis other districts?
Sure. I think there are two answers. Oh, sorry. I apologize for that.
Go ahead. No,
The
go, please.
first, I think, actually we can get some information from the data warehouse. So we talked a little bit about gap comparisons this evening, and the gaps we shared with you compared our district to the county average. But one of the other functions we're able to do in the data warehouse is to compare, and again, this doesn't account for the opt-out questions, I'll come back to that in a moment. But we can look at the performance of how our students performed on every item compared to Jericho students or compared to Jericho and East Williston. So we're able to kind of get that fine-grained look at how our students responded to each item. So that gives us some insight. Other measures are a little bit bigger in scope. So for example, I shared a little bit of information about the STAR assessment. So that assessment, although it's not local comparison districts, gives us nationally normed percentiles, which we're able to look at. Other districts will share how their students are performing on those assessments and able to look at those comparisons as well. But that doesn't get, that only applies to our first and second graders who take that assessment. It's interesting to think about, are there, for example, are other districts interested in us giving, for example, sharing our common assessments with them and looking at comparisons across. So that's an interesting area for us to invest in.
Thank you.
Would you say, so you felt our opt-outs were representative of the student population as a whole. So is it fair to compare our scores then to districts with very low opt-out rates, i.e. Manhasset and Jericho?
I think so. I mean,
Probably.
We don't know who in their districts is opting out.
Right, I'm just saying, so you can only look at districts where almost no one's opting out, and then, but, yeah. Trustees, anyone else? Please, Rich.
Thank you very much. That was a really well-done, complete, analysis of what's happening. It's very impressive. Thank you for the work. My question is, what opportunities do faculty have, not just for intra, but inter-school work among the grade levels, so people can see what other people are doing?
Actually, that's something that we work very hard to do, that we make this like some of our Monday meeting times, to bring together teachers across grades to work together and work on units together. Also, some of our work in developing units and different committees that we do are cross-district. For example, the vocabulary work I alluded to was a district-wide committee. Our PADI project in fourth grade that was featured with a district-wide committee with representation from all the schools. And then we also have our literacy coaches and reading teachers across the schools, our math AIS people as well. and we meet together and bring back information to the schools, and we also bring the teachers together on Mondays, so that, for example, we might have, last Monday we had a room in Glen Head with every grade level together, talking about the next unit that we're beginning, and they had the opportunity to talk together about the unit, to share their ideas for it, to talk about the curriculum and what they felt needed to be done in order to deliver the curriculum most effectively to their students, and to share some of their most effective examples from last year to guide their work for this year. So we do try very hard to build in those opportunities, and a major goal of ours is to be able to keep the individual nature of each classroom, where a teacher or the students themselves can bring stuff in, but at the same time to have a agreed-upon outcome, so that whatever class a child is in, anywhere in the district, they will have the same outcome.
Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions. Thank you for your presentation. I'm looking at it from a different viewpoint now, but I just want to start with you talking about the data set, I guess that is derived through BOCES. It's kind of a data warehouse. So are you able to decipher what particular areas, and I'm going to use students with disabilities since there is a gap there, what areas that they're struggling in? I can only imagine now that the math curriculum is very literacy heavy, that those students who struggle with reading and literacy would probably have similar difficulties on those sections of the test, but I'm just thinking, I don't have the data in front of me, but I wonder if that's...
Absolutely. We're able to look at those subgroups and their performance again, item by item, standard by standard, item set by item. And what you're saying is absolutely true. And those are, and then what we do as a result is think about what instructional strategies we can use in intervention in the whole class setting to support those skills.
Right.
But I agree with you 100%. Much of it is literacy skills, unpacking word problems. We've done a lot of work around how to do that and what strategies can be.
Right. And so I would assume that as you discussed, talking about like the interpersonnel collaboration, so literacy teachers and the special ed teachers as well. Do special ed teachers have the opportunity to participate in general ed professional development, such as Teachers College?
Yes. In our Teachers College professional development, we do have our special education teachers participating as well. In addition, they're part of our meetings that we have when we meet together on a grade level to talk, and they have a very active role as well, so it's really a very collaborative situation where people are working and growing together.
How, when did we get this data? It was a little bit late this year, is that true? It always seems to me it instructs instruction, but what you're putting together for the next year, is there any articulation between the previous year's teachers to the next year's teachers, and then you look at the data together? I have a feeling that most teachers know how their students are going to perform on these assessments, but is there formal communications between?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We actually get the gap analysis data in the end of June. We don't get the actual test scores
Okay.
at the end of August, but we're able to start looking at the gap reports, some of the subgroups.
That's good to know. That's nice to know.
Informal work. But yes, we spend a lot of time working with individual teachers, grade levels of teachers, to think about how their students did last year in general instruction, what their students this year look like, trends in the data. So we do all of that.
And you're also able to pull out from the data, so another area of focus in terms of equity among learners. So you can see the ELL learners and whether, for example, is TC working for the ELL learner or the Latino population? I'm interested in TC and how that's working for us and how it works for kids with disabilities and our ELL and Latino
And even on the
population.
NICEAD site, it breaks out every single one of those categories for anyone to look at, every subcategory and every set of proficiency scores.
I know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
It's fun. You should. Yeah.
Fun.
The other thing I want to speak to with that is the design of the reading and writing workshop approach is very well designed, actually, for students who have a variety of learning needs. Because while there's a mini lesson that helps teach the standards that all the students participate, the bulk of the time during each workshop period is students working independently on goals appropriate for them, and then the teacher working specifically with individuals and with small groups on their needs.
So
we are
conferencing,
able to
right.
target the work for exactly what students need. And that is also a time when we have ENL teachers in the room and special education teachers in the room working with the teachers to meet the needs of the students, and they also coordinate and plan so that they think about, when I'm designing my mini lesson, what are some things I may want to think about that will make it more accessible for everyone, and our teachers have dedicated planning time when they consider
Right.
that.
And incorporating those goals that might be in an IEP for a special ed student. Thank you.
Anyone here? Dave?
I want to reiterate what the other trustees said. This was a very strong presentation today. Thank you. Very, very strong. I thought you did it was particularly helpful to understand the context of the different types of assessments, both traditional and then also, as President Jones said, what we've been doing here with the SVOs, and really in a way that wasn't just examples that made us see, but really made us, for me at least, understand how we measure those things, at least qualitatively. I think quantitatively would be a big stretch. I'm not sure how we would even approach that, but we'll wait to see. And you had good material to work with as well, so our students doing well. So this is certainly a welcome report. I had a couple comments. Number one, with regard to the gaps. Certainly, we're going to be focusing on equity this year. Those are some glaring issues that obviously we're going to have to figure out how we're going to address. So I'm glad that we have the data that we can then apply to what we're going to be focusing on to try to resolve that, because it's important. We want all, as you all said, we want all of our students to progress to the maximum ability that they have. Question I had sort of twofold. It's sort of about parents and about the community. So SVOs were always sort of a foreign concept to people. It's something we did that's kind of new here. Do you find the community is understanding it more? Obviously, your kindergartners don't, but as people have been doing this for a few years, is it becoming more ingrained in the community and with students and with families?
I'll start. I think, like the SBOs themselves, the evidence on that is very qualitative. But I think one thing we're starting to see, especially with the kindergarten parents, is that they're choosing North Shore because of the focus on the SBO work and the whole balanced child. And that is something that I hear with new entrants into the district a lot. They're moving into North Shore. One thing that helps in that regard is when we talk about an authentic audience, oftentimes the authentic audience for these projects are the parents, and they come to see the work that's being done and they get to see their student work. But I do think there is room for growth in that area.
I think that the name SVO is still not clear, but parents are very clear on what it means to become the community individuals and figures of ourselves. And I think particularly the strongest part of that is that our children do speak that language. They know exactly what that is. And they're not prompted in any way when we talk. They automatically come up with, well, as a problem-solving class, or I collaborate with Bob. They just do that naturally. So I think it comes from the children when we're talking about it at school, and parents pick up a lot of that. But if you ask about the SBOs, I think they kind of know, but they know more when you see it.
Okay. I'm sorry. And just as a follow-up, we talked about so many different ways that we've assessed our younger students here, and they're all so valuable. It does have me thinking about, I don't know, bring this up, but sort of the report cards don't really do the same thing, don't really measure it in the same way. They're very Common Core aligned, which we didn't really talk about, which is more of a curriculum-based assessment. And I know we recently reviewed that, so I'm not sure what the thought is about that, if we're happy with where we are, if we want to continue to look at that. But it does seem like there's a bit of a mismatch between the way that we're reporting achievement for our students in the really impressive way you've reported it here and what each individual family gets in the portal now.
Yeah, I think that would be a key way to address the first issue that you brought up. If we delineated that in a clearer way on the report cards, not only the negative parts, but I think that could be a way to get that home and to help internalize that for families as well.
Thank you. Again, thank you.
I have a question, and it's a lot of data, and if you didn't look at this, you didn't look at it, it's all good. When I'm watching this, it looks to me, and I could be mistaken, that that there's improvement between 3rd and 5th grade, from 3rd, 4th to 5th, relative to the other schools, that we were already doing very well, but we kind of pull further ahead. And the reason I was struck by it a little bit, I don't know if you saw, like more than a year ago in the Times, there was an analysis of the school districts in the state and which ones were demonstrating like the biggest growth in students. And North Shore, even a few years ago, where these scores didn't look so great, that analysis said, no, really, what we're doing is significant and interesting. And so I was wondering if, in fact, I was trying to see that analysis about the growth we were getting out of just a year of a kid, being more than a year, was showing up in how we perform relative to others between 3rd and 5th grade.
I think it's a little tricky to make those comparisons just because the scales on the assessment aren't comparable across years. The work the state is actually now doing, or they're promising to do, is to make those comparisons more possible for us. But right now, it's difficult to make those, year-to-year comparisons.
Data set's a little small. It's not a giant district.
A sort of general comment. So if that question where what's the best answer, that's what they ask you on the New York State bar exam. So if you have any little lawyers in the making, it's really get them practicing now, because when they're 25, it's going to come back and haunt them. But I do just want to make a general comment from a parent who's at the other end of the spectrum. I have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, one who graduated college and one who's in his sophomore year of college. And I think when we were all going through school, at least when I was going through school in the Stone Age, there wasn't a lot of presentational and collaborative work. And I saw even the gap in my children of 3 years, that my son had much more group work, presentational work, and collaborative work. And I will tell you that the colleges now are demanding a lot more of that type of work. So starting it in the elementary school level is really very important. And when they come to the high school and they're hitting the IB work, that requires a lot more presentational, collaborative type work. So I just wanted to mention that to parents who don't think that this is important, because when they went to college, this was not the way we were tested or the way we did our work. But it really is reflective of what is going on, at least from my experience, my limited experience with 2 children at the university level.
Thank you.
All right. And I was going to say, I wanted to thank Deborah for flagging the correct answers on the sample question, so that we didn't,
If these children that presented tonight are, in situ, is a great example of what you're doing in their communication skills or collaborative skills and presentation skills. I'm so impressed with elementary school children, students who are doing that. So we're well on our way. And I agree with Trustee Russo. Even my own son, who went to a pre-college program, he realized when he was doing a presentation how lucky he was to go to a school like this, because he got up and gave a presentation. He didn't even read from note cards, where other kids were very nervous. And you don't understand that until you see it. And my own son was able to reflect and say, wow, I guess it's good to go to school in North Shore. It's too bad it took him until he was 16 to appreciate it, but thank you for that.
Anybody else? I think we're set. Everyone feels very happy. Thank you.
And thank you all very, very much. Good synthesis and a really thoughtful presentation. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, and please feel free to flee the building. Please drive safely.
And chickpea chocolate chip cookies are still.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you all
They're actually
tomorrow.
very good.
We'll let you know how the contract voting comes out for the rest of the night. No.
All right. Thank you.
All right. All right, our next item is comments from the public. If there are any of the members of the community that have a comment from the board, if you'd approach the podium.
Discussion item first.
Oh, no, I skipped something again. Sorry, my bad. It's not public comment. Apparently, I'm trying to move ahead. We have a second discussion. We are now the board's going to discuss potentially changing the start time for our public sessions. We have had a 7:30 p.m. start time for some time. Of late, we have had trouble wrapping up executive session business and making it here on time for a 7:30 start, and we are going to have a conversation about whether we should change that start time or not. I think our premise, but if anyone disagrees, please correct me, is that we want a consistent start time. We're not looking to move it around from one meeting to the next so that people can count on it, but we are considering whether we need a slightly later start time so it's not to keep people waiting for us while we're working. Comments?
As it should be. I mean, I think it works to give us enough time in executive session to not feel rushed and running out here with unfinished business. So I think it's the way to proceed.
And specifically, right, we've been discussing just a 15-minute shift to 7:45?
Initially, the change was made from 8 to 7:30 in the hopes of getting more elementary parents at the Board of Ed meeting. I don't really think it's been successful.
I think I have a feeling we're all going to be in agreement. I don't know if we need that much more discussion. We're talking about 15-minute change. We don't like to be rushed.
15-minute change.
It's going to be standard and fixed. Seems like this could be one of our shorter discussions. Maybe.
It could be. Is there anyone that wants to express a concern about the shift? Assuming we shift to 7:45, do we have any thoughts about if we should begin that at the next meeting, or if for any reason the public would need more notice than that? I think a couple of weeks probably.
I think
Yeah,
you know, if that was put out online and it's posted, I think it's fine for next meeting.
I agree. It's, you know, the only harm is that somebody might show up early, and that's
We
it.
could leave cookies out for them.
That's right.
Okay,
So
do we need to?
11:08, we'll let it be so. 7:45 start.
7:45.
6:30 p.m. exec session.
Yep.
Session. Very good. All right.
Or later, if we don't need 6:30 for those of us traveling from Westchester.
We have to start exactly at 6:30. We will
stressed.
make it. a
Moving in and
policy.
out of traffic to get here in time.
Well,
We'll have the flexibility.
we're just saying, should there be a moment? Okay,
Okay. Done.
I will try again. We will now open the microphone for publics from the comment.
Comments from the public?
Oh, man.
Comments from the public. If you would please approach the podium and give us your name and town of residence. We would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Rob Mazzello, Glen Head. I was curious if anyone in the administration reached out to roughly 10 to 15 families of current 8th grade students.
Is that, am I?
I don't think it's on.
I'm like, am I hard of, I'm.
Okay, better?
There you
I'm
go.
not.
Okay, so Rob Mazzello, Glen Head. I was curious if anyone in the administration reached out to the roughly 10 to 15 families of current 8th grade students who moved their children to private schools before the start of their 8th grade year. I'm not sure of the historical numbers, but it seemed like a large number to me. Personally, knowing a couple of the reasons why some of the children were moved, I believe it would be beneficial for school administrators to hear from these members of our community, because all of our children would benefit from attempts to understand and address the reasons. Just on a different topic, related to the math, now I know it was said it was hard to do year-over-year comparisons. I have been over the years curious, I haven't asked in a while, to see if there was any type of achievement gap between the current 8th graders and 9th graders versus the current 6th and 7th graders. About 5 years ago, the curriculum was switched to what was mentioned to be a better curriculum, but third grade and up stayed with the old curriculum. And there have been a couple of presentations over the years where people have suggested that there was improvement with the new curriculum. And I've asked a couple of times what could be done to help the current 8th and 9th graders fill that gap, that knowledge gap. And I was pretty much ignored by the old administration. So just curious if there is a way to find out if there is a gap still, and if there is a gap, is there something we could do about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other comments from the public? Okay, we will move on. Thank you all. We are up to action item C, which is personnel. Do I have a motion? Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Action item D is the appointment of our Legislative Action Committee members. We're appointing Tracy Bacher, Ralph Casey, Danny O'Connor, Larry Ruisi, Jessica Ward to LAC, and we are appointing Cheryl Brown as our chairperson. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Wait,
I'm
discussion?
sorry. Discussion?
Okay, so I just want to note there were other members of LAC here that were being appointed, and in the future, would it be possible when we're having a long presentation to move that up as an agenda
Absolutely.
item?
Yes.
Because I felt badly between the board appreciation and the presentation, we lost some of the people who were here to see themselves appointed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My comment was, we spent a lot of time thanking us, which we certainly appreciate tonight, but I think it's important to throw it back. The people from LAC are also not paid, are also volunteering, are also giving a lot of their time, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to Cheryl for stepping up and volunteering to chair this, and I look forward to a good year. So, here we go.
Because we absolutely need them, so thank you. All right. Ready for a vote? All in favor? Thank you, trustees. Action item E, we're accepting a donation from Eric Adu to the Glen Head Elementary School. The donation materials and labor to build the vegetable beds at the Glen Head School is part of an Eagle Scout project. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments?
If I can, he was here. He just, he had some homework to do, so he went home, but I asked him if there was anything he wanted reflected to the board. He is very excited. He's doing this as his Eagle Scout project. He's worked directly with Mrs. Nimmo and the staff at Glen Head to identify a space where they'll put 6 planting beds in. I've reviewed those planting beds. They make a lot of good sense for to expand the outdoor work. Yes, absolutely. And he's excited to get started, so he thanks the board for accepting his very generous donation.
That's terrific. That is really exciting news. Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor? Thank you. Action F is the approval of budget transfers. We are transferring $323,500 to cover heavy brush clearing at the Glenwood Landing School and special ed related expenses. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any questions or discussion? Trustee?
Just wanted a little more info on the heavy clearing. I know that area is sort of a, you walk up there and the plants are coming at you. It's like Little Shop of Horrors, but there's also a lot of area along Scudder's and along Cody's. I wasn't sure what's being done.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact demarcation of where it starts, where it ends, but that whole area, Cody and Scudder's, is so overgrown and really hasn't been addressed in quite some time. So we're asking parents not to cut through the back and come around the front, and so if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that the pathway there is a clear one and clean. So so that's what that's related to. We're going to contract that out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
As long as it doesn't need any approval, I guess this is just a
No.
landscape project. So they can begin
Right away.
Okay, great.
I was going to ask, it does seem like some significant shifts in the budget for special ed expenses early in the year. So that left me concerned about
So I can go through
the planning and the budget and how we ended up, needing to move so much money this
Well,
way.
there's a few reasons for why the changes, right? So we had 0.7 in overages in special education, and then we added, if you remember, after the budget was approved in the spring, we added a 0.5 kindergarten special ed ICT teacher to Glenwood Landing, so that covers that. And then there's the $69,000 of that is just a transfer in OT. So there was Jen Matarese is on leave for childcare, and so her money is coming from salaries, and we hired a contract employee, so we can't
So you
pay a
moved that?
contractor out of a salary code. And then the last piece of that was $55,000 to fund the teaching assistant that we added at Glen Head for kindergarten.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you for those details.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you. Action G is the approval to dispose of inventory, a fascinating list of out-of-date technology equipment primarily. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
And again, just to remind the board, the tractors and the cars and all that stuff, we try to auction those off.
Thank you for flagging
Yeah,
those
no,
on
helpful,
the
yeah.
agenda. That was very helpful. Action H is the approval of the agreement between North Shore and 3R Industries, which is professional development for the Singapore map. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any questions?
I have some questions.
Okay.
Who's receiving that professional development? Is that for elementary school?
This has moved on to the secondary schools now, Tim. We had a large focus of bringing Bon Har, who's associated with 3R Industries, to the elementary schools over the years. But as Math and Focus is going into the upper grade levels, now we're providing that staff development to the middle school and high school teachers.
So is that a full day of staff development?
It is, yes.
And so for the classes, students will just have substitutes in their math classes that day?
They will have substitutes, but part of the professional development is Dr. Yi Bon Har working in classes with the kids as demoing strategic instructional strategies with the students. So I don't recall how many of those classes he's doing, but I believe it's 3 or 4 during the course of the day. So those classes will remain intact. And I believe it's in the Algebra 2 class where he's doing demo lessons for teachers, so they will have classes that day.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not only a question with this item, and maybe it's more appropriately brought under new business, but we don't put the numbers on the contracts for any of the consultant or professional development. And I would think it would be something for transparency the board should consider putting on the actual cost of contracts, professional developments on the agenda items along with the agenda items. So there's a code for professional development, but the community doesn't know really how that is broken down.
We can do that. It's easy enough to do.
I kind of feel like we used to. I feel like it was there at one point with the dollar values on there.
The resolution comes from the attorneys. Okay. We can ask them to add the value of the contract. That's easy enough to do.
It's just, and it's also easier for us because I was flipping back and forth between the contract and the agenda, writing down the amounts.
That's easy too. We can do that starting at the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on this one? On H? All right, if we're ready to vote, all in favor? Thank you. Action I is the approval agreement between North Shore and Samuel Mainzer. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any questions or discussions? Trustee?
So on the fine and performing arts, we used to have someone who was employed here on a stipend basis who was in charge of the fine and performing arts. And we also had someone who had a costume design shop who was also on a contract basis with us. It seems since we no longer have those people in place that the cost for the wardrobes and the scenery has escalated. I don't know how we price it out or we bid it. So in the future, could we have some, I don't know what you do tonight, I didn't ask you ahead of time, but in the future, can we have some sort of explanation or discussion as to how we price out scenery, how we price out costumes? Is there some sort of bidding process? How will people select it? We had other issues too with choreographers, so it would be interesting to know, since things are sort of in flux, how that's done.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, if we're ready to vote, all in favor? Thank you. J is the approval of the agreement between North Shore and Adelphi University to offer classes that will credit at Adelphi. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any questions? Discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
Fair enough. All in favor? Thank you. K is the approval of the agreement between North Shore and Erase Racism. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any questions? Trustee?
So I just had a question, and it also applied to another item. It said the price was $1,000 for each workshop. Is that the cumulative amount? Is there only one workshop, or are there multiple workshops?
One workshop.
So one. So it's $1,000 for
Yes.
the day. So that's the total cost.
Yes.
Just the wording was a little strange on that and on another
Understood.
contract.
Yep, understood, but one for the day.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Was there a question on this side? We're good? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. L, approval agreement between North Shore and Learn Through Movement / Math and Movement. Do I have a motion? Motion. Do I have a second? I think I had a second. Questions? All in favor?
This is a cool program.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I just want to highlight and remind the board that this professional development comes by way of a grant, the Lowe's grant, I think you may recall accepting, I think it was last school year.
Last year.
And it was written by Megan McCormick on behalf of the phys ed and actually the classroom teachers. So the money to pay for this is coming from that grant.
Great. Thank you for adding that. Action M is the agreement between North Shore and Detroit Kennedy. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second? Questions?
I have some questions. Oh, do you want
I'm
to go
sorry.
ahead?
No, Tim, please.
No, you can. Yeah, my question. In terms of who's receiving this, or who will be attending the workshop?
The sorry. I meant to say superintendent. Sorry about that. I was ahead of my words. Quite embarrassing. The superintendent's conference day, the beginning session of the morning session, half of the day is with the racism. In the second half of the day, there are a series of workshops being presented from which the faculty will have to make a choice. I believe, if my count is correct, there are 17 workshops from which the faculty would choose. The registration for those workshops are going out at the beginning of next week, so I'll know numbers as to not only the numbers of people, but who will be attending each of the workshops. At this point, I don't know who it will be.
Okay. And when it says the impact or trauma and its impact, is that environmental trauma? Is it experiential?
Actually, it's a great question, Tim. It's all types of trauma related to what students experience. The The person who is doing this workshop comes to us by way of our Director of Counseling, Linda Binion. We had actually tried to get the original person from this organization that she heard speak, but unfortunately she's like booked for years now. So one of her, the people who work in her organization is doing the presentation. The trauma that they speak about is all types of trauma, not only trauma that's in the world around us, but even something such as the trauma coming or living through a divorce in the family, and how that trauma impacts the brain and therefore impacts learning. So it's trauma of all sorts.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Second one was my question. Thank you.
Good? Everybody? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Action N is our agreement with SUNY Old Westbury to use their pool. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Questions?
Just, oh, sorry. Tim. Just wanted to be, this is part of a pre-budgeted line. There'll be no transfers needed for this. This is, because I know Old Westbury's new to us.
Right, we budget for the use of a pool for the men's and women's swimming program, and this is this funds the use of that pool.
Okay, great. It's a great facility.
If you remember last year, we had many issues with pool usage and switching around, and so this gives us a consistent pool for both programs.
Ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you. Action O is the resolution for a type 2 action regarding the electric feed replacement at the middle school. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? I know that was exciting. Action P, similarly, resolution for a type 2 action regarding the proposed building improvements at multiple district properties, which you have all reviewed. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any questions or comments? Please.
I would just comment that this is work primarily, largely, that was part of the capital project, right? And it was funded through our capital reserve and approved by the public at the last vote. So,
Yes, thank you.
Yes, these are not new. Yes.
All in favor? Supporting the will of the people? Thank you. Action Q, approval agreement with Rita Earlina Comerford. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
second.
Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Action R is approval of a special education services agreement. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second, I think. All in favor? Thank you. We will move on to our second session for comments from the public. If anyone has something they would like to share with the board, if they would come to the podium and give us their name and town of residence. Thank you.
Good evening. Danny O'Connor, Glen Head. I just had three quick things that I noticed on here. When you voted on Action G, the auctioning off of some of those vehicles, I just asked maybe sometimes if the board, if these opportunities come up, that they may think about some of the local community groups. I'm personally involved with the Glenwood Glenhead Baseball, and just to give you an example, a lot of people in the community don't know, but the monies that we take in, we actually pay a lot of the costs down at Gaynor Field. We just personally spent $6,500 this month just seeding and getting the fields ready for the kids for the spring. I know the community usually thinks Town of Oyster Bay just does that automatically. You pay your taxes and it happens. And we're in the middle of actually putting together a 10-year analysis of the costs, and we buy our own tractors and a lot of that stuff. So just something to think about if there are things to be auctioned off. I'm not sure how they get auctioned off or who gets alerted to it, but it may be a benefit to the community somehow if there's a way to put that together. So just, you know, out of the box thinking. The The second thing I had, which has come up in the community, and it was interesting, I know there's always a lot of talk about security in the schools and what we're doing to update the security and stuff. It actually came out that I found out the security guards actually don't get sick days. And I'm not sure if that's 100% correct or not, so is that the truth, or is that something that is erroneous out in the community?
So currently, right now, they do not get sick days.
Okay.
They're hourly employees.
Whereas I don't always agree with state and local governments telling businesses, and I'll consider the school a business, how many sick days to give and what to do. I think the city of New York now forces every business with 10 employees or more to give like some crazy amount of sick days. So it's just something I ask, as there's a lot of talk about security, and being in business, I personally don't like being told what to give to employees, but I would think that it would just be nice to maybe give them the few minimal days or whatever it may be, or just something to think about. And again, it's something that's come to me in the community because I'm involved in a lot of different things, so I just thought you should know about that community conversation. And I had one other thing, but I forget what it is, so I didn't write it down. But I do appreciate the time, and sorry for waiting so long on that. It just caught me when I was reading the line items.
While you're up there, Olivia, where do we advertise these auctions and dispositions of vehicles? Like, where would they look?
We have a website that but when you was talking about it, I was thinking if you can give us a name of a person that we can contact.
Sure.
So that before we put it for auction,
Sure.
we can contact you.
Definitely.
That would be the best way to do it.
Definitely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have anyone else? All right, we're up to old business. Trustees?
Yeah, go ahead.
She was quick.
I'm going first? Okay. A few meetings ago, there were parents here from the who had children in the kindergarten at Glen Head, and I was thinking that perhaps in a future meeting we can put on as a discussion item, considering creating some sort of committee or directing central administration to explore ways that we can move towards trying to achieve greater equity in class sizes between schools, and come up with some possibilities for doing that.
Okay. Even across schools?
Across schools,
Yeah.
trying to just come up with ways of creating equity there.
Okay. Thank you.
So mine is about the enrollment reports. Last year, we had talked about keeping an archive of these that are available to us so we can kind of study and analyze them when we get them. And one of the things that we've talked about, and actually Rob asked about it in public session today, is how people move through our district. Do people go to private school because that's their plan all along? Are there people who are, for whatever reason, leaving and or coming? And so I just did a quick October of 17 to October of 18 analysis of the same cohort moving through. And again, it's 1 year of data, so of course it tells me nothing except that 1 year. But it did get me thinking that on overall, from cohort to cohort, we added 23 kids, some as many as 18 from first to second last year, 13 in kindergarten, so it seems like there's more growth in the early part, and some losses, smaller losses, 5, 4, 7 kids a little bit later. But I guess I'd like to ask how far back those enrollment reports go, and can we get access to those enrollment reports over a much longer period of time? For example, if I had 15, 16 years of Octobers, you could very easily see what people are doing. Do we lose kids from 6th to 7th grade? Do we gain them? Are we always gaining first, second, thirds? Because you talk about these demographic studies, and I don't think we've talked about it before, which is why I brought it up under old business. I don't think we have a really good sense of how people come to our district historically. Are a bunch of young kids moving in, and then they either stay or we have attrition? Are people moving throughout? Is it completely random? So I'd like to just tinker with some of those enrollment report numbers if they're available. Because I'm curious.
Please. Okay. So I don't know how far those enrollment reports go back. We could certainly we could ask the question. That's for sure. Probably a little ways. There are a couple of ways to go about engaging in the analysis. One of which is, to look at them in that, look at it that way, see what kind of trends are there. We could also ask as we go. We're going to be doing a full demographic study and capacity study as part of our pre-bond work. We could take a look at the cohort survival rates within that report as well, and that could probably give us some good information if you'd like to pursue it that way and save certainly yourself a lot of time.
If that's something that we can do, maybe I could suggest the information I'd like, and you can either show it to the board or show it to the demographic study folks, and make sure it's something achievable that doesn't overdo it.
Sure.
Because that's a piece of information I just feel like is a missing link in these discussions. That it's a pretty simple, straightforward data.
Absolutely. Rob, did you? I'm sorry, Mary.
I just want to follow up on that. When they're doing the demographic study, I think it's really important to look at not just our district, but Long Island as a whole. So we moved into this district almost 25 years ago, and we didn't have children at the time. So when I was looking at the school district, there were like 14 to 16 kids in a class at Glen Head. And then it moved up to by the time my daughter started, she had 19 kids. By the time my son started there, I think we're 21 or 22 or 23, whatever. And then we had this big boom, and then it went down again. So I'm not sure, if that follows, the cyclical nature of the population, moving. But I think if you look at the data that's been presented, that generally across Long Island, there is a decline in the younger population. So I'm just worried about the reliability of just looking at our data per se, as opposed to it in a larger setting.
That's why I mentioned the cohort survival report, because the cohort survival will historically look at the rate to which your cohorts survive over time. Where are they coming? Where are they leaving? And the size of the cohort matters less than what percentage of that cohort stays or goes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I understand I understand and I hear your point. I actually agree with you. You want to take a look at not just the what's happening in Seacliff, Glen Head, Glenwood Landing, Roslyn Harbor, but what's trending across Long Island demographically.
Right, in terms, yes, in terms of population, in terms of sales, that sort of thing.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I think those are two really important questions. I think I don't want to read into Rob's question, but I think the question is, are people maybe somehow losing interest in North Shore as they get to that age and finding other alternatives? So I think while the larger demographic study is important, I think it's also important for us, at least at North Shore, to know, are we losing kids from 5th to 6th grades? Are we losing them from 8th to 9th? Are we gaining them at some point? So I think that they're both good pieces of information.
The economy also plays into it too. That's what I'm saying about the bigger picture, because if you were here, there was a big movement prior to 2008 to putting kids in private school, and then the economy crashed, and I think we must have gotten 25 kids that year at the high school that we didn't have before. And that doesn't seem like a big number, but it is a big number when you have, at that time, we had very small class size, right? We had maybe 150 kids a class, right? So it was 25 kids out of what's essentially 600 kids. That's a big percentage, right? So those are other things to look at.
we have looked at all the students who have entered and left. The middle school principal tracks that data, the high school principal tracks that, all the principals track that. We haven't made specific outreach to the families for, actually that's not a job. I haven't made targeted outreach to those families who have left, but we know the reason for why each and every student is leaving the schools, because we call them and we ask them.
And do you find out if and when they return?
Yes. Yeah, what we find, so a common trend is that we have a group of students who leave in grade 8 to 9 to go to private school or a Catholic school or whatever. We have a good number of those kids come back in grade 10 every year for lots of different reasons. Not all, but a higher percentage of kids return in 10 than in any of the other grade levels. We'll pursue it for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was going to mention what Peter just mentioned. The other piece that I just throw some information out there just because I happen to have done this study with a particular grade level. I looked back at the students in that grade level, and there's, believe it or not, as a district, we have a high mobility rate, and particularly mobility coming into the district, but not until later years. So I was looking at this particular 6th grade for several reasons, and quite a few of those students, about 24 of them, if my count serves me right, did not come into the district until after 3rd grade, which is kind of interesting. And when I first started here 16 years ago, I did a study for a different reason, and we were surprised to see that there was a mobility rate of students coming in and leaving the district higher than we even thought was apparent here. We didn't think that there was a mobility rate, a high mobility rate, but there was, interestingly enough.
Other old business? New business?
I have an item. On October 10th, which was a Wednesday, the high school administered the PSAT exam to 10th and 11th graders, and it's the 3rd year, I think, in a row that we've done it during a school day. And it not only impacts 10th and 11th graders in terms of their instruction, it also impacts freshmen and seniors who essentially did not have a school day on that particular day. And I was wondering if we could get some feedback from Mr. Cousins and the high school in general, teachers, and whether or not they think it's worthwhile to continue administering it on that day rather than administering it on the Saturday when many more districts do it. I mean, I just looked at the calendars of some surrounding districts, and almost all of them do it on Saturday.
Right, and it's clearly just right. The other grades have these sort of abbreviated schedules that involve, being in the auditorium.
The seniors essentially did not have a school day, and there were some, things that the freshmen were doing in terms of in the auditorium. But
although last year I think the freshmen had a field trip or something. They took them.
Freshmen freshmen last year had a field trip. This year,
was nice.
Which was good. Yep. This year the freshmen didn't have a field trip. This year the freshmen had. That's okay. They spent part of their day with the Nassau County Pop officers who came and did some training with them. And then I forget there were other parts of the day there was a team building part of the day. There was a common lunch. There was the day was structured out for them.
And wrapped up a little early, I think.
And wrapped up a little early, exactly. Yeah, the benefit of doing it during the day. I mean, there's we can put together an analysis for the board. That's easy enough to do.
Okay, thank you. Other new business. Joanna, do you want to make a motion to adjourn? I do. She was giving me a steadfast gaze. Second, and we will adjourn the meeting for this evening. Thank you to all of you who stuck it out with us. And trustees, you have many, many gifts, but you have not yet gotten a chance to take something from the vegetable basket. So, get some vegetables.